This is the Gospel Revolution.
Since you're knocking on the door, you're begging to come in, yeah. Unaware that all the while love's been knocking from within. You are the love you see, a perfect yet unique, righteous, holy.
Here's the founder and president of the Gospel Revolution, Michael Lilborn Williams.
My goodness, you sound so sedated and calm and cool and collected, Daniel.
Have
you been humming again? Hi.
Hi. How are you?
Let's up the energy around here. Good Lord.
And in the right wing.
Don't forget the left wing. We are in that season. Thank you, folks, for joining Daniel and I. And we have just this morning, the reason I was kind of surprised by Daniel's demure beginning as we were laughing our asses off right before we started to record. So, but that's just shows the degree of professionality that this man has. So, thank you, Daniel. So,
yes, of course.
Yes,
yes, indeed.
Now he's turned into a Hindu. So. Oh, goodness. The many faces of Daniel Thomas Rouse. Daniel, what are we doing today?
Well, I think the first thing in the docket, Michael, is we are kicking off our fall pledge drive.
Money, money, money. That's all you want to talk about is money.
Well, actually, Michael, to the contrary, we just did a conference in which we put out just one little video, and that was the only financial appeal. We left that off of all of the other videos.
Every video.
Posted, and we just left one in the playlist, and whether people listen to it or not, that was totally up to them. But that was the extent of our fundraising efforts during the conference.
Yes, and it seems to have paid off. Our fundraising fell short as much as $10,000 US. Oh my gosh!
Whoops! Maybe we should have done that.
Yeah, guys, we're now. The reason we did not talk about it is because now Daniel and I felt it was so important that this series was to people who do not contribute and to the future that we didn't bring it up. But you guys just let us down. That's all. I mean, I thought we were in this together. And no, thank you. All of you who did contribute, yes. Let me take a moment to explain why the conference income is important and the pledge drive. Because we do not have enough monthlies coming in.
Mm-hmm.
So what happens is we refill the coffers, if you will, through Canada. Canada is a huge asset on those two. And then we also do the pledge drives, which the pledge drives, the last one fell off a bit. No, I think we reached our goal on that one, didn't we?
Yeah, we did good on the last one.
Yeah, we did. We reached our goal on it. And so that evened up the water, floated all boats. And but we were back to the point to where that we really needed the Canada conference to come through. And the guys did give us, it was $8,500 total US. But we're much more used to having anywhere from 16 to 20,000 come in from Canada. And so that has, because of the loss of monthlies, and we've got a lot of folks that are senior and elderly, and some of them just have gotten to the point where that they can't afford it anymore. And most of them, it's not that they can't afford it. Some of them have just really gotten elderly and they're just not connected to what is going on in the GR. They're living out their senior years in peace because of what they learned. And we're very happy for them about that. If we could get, Daniel, a minimum of $3,000 a month more in monthly contributions out of this pledge drive, that would be extremely successful.
Mm-hmm.
But as you guys think about what you're going to do, don't think about just the one time. And I know that it's been my dereliction of duties in not emphasizing the monthlies. But we just haven't done it. I just am not that good at this thing called raising funds, because we get so excited about what we're doing, we forget we're broke, you know. And we are not broke, please. That was in jest. But we do need $3,000 more a month, and we've lost that $3,000 a month just over the last couple of years. Really, it has dropped back, and so consider helping us out. We'll be talking to you more about it, and we'll be dialing for dollars very soon.
And you can preempt that call by calling Jeff, because during the pledge drive, he is always standing by, ready to take your call. And you can reach him at 321-220-4373. That's 321-220-4373. Or, of course, you can visit gospelrevolution.com, hit the donate button. When you click that, you'll have a couple different options. You can set up your monthly pledge via PayPal. You can also set that up through Jeff. He can do a reoccurring payment on your debit or credit card. And also on there, you'll find our mailing address. And if you want to just mail it in every month, and that'll reach Hazel, and she'll gladly be able to facilitate that as well.
Or you can call me. I know how to take money.
You're a professional.
I used to be able to take it a whole lot better than I can take now. But 832-318-9339. And it is more profitable for your dollars to do this through the office. In other words, we put your credit card on file. One of our GRs that fairly new, and I found out that they were going through some difficult times, and I think their contributions it's somewhere between $200 and $300 a month, the best I remember. And Daniel, Don would smack me upside the head, but I called specifically to let them know that I knew where they were, and I asked them to please discontinue their contributions for now.
And Don just rolled over in his grave.
And he did, and screamed and cried. I mean,
there was wailing and gnashing of teeth.
I'm telling you, it's like Michael. I mean, there was a tone he had from the term Michael when I did things like this that otherworldly. I'm telling you, it really was otherworldly. But and I say that to you to let you know that our interest really is in you. Mm-hmm. Now we have to take care of the interest of the ministry, and I don't want to struggle for money, folks. I don't want to ever go back there, and we're not struggling at this moment. But if we continue with the types of deficiencies that we have encountered recently, and especially our monthlies, we've got to get the monthlies up. Mm-hmm. And that's going to help us so much. But your one-time contribution this cycle also is very important. So I think we've got that out of the way, don't we, Daniel?
Yeah. Once again, you can call Jeff at 321-220-4373 or visit gospelrevolution.com and hit donate. And we appreciate all of your help.
Yeah. I got the gospel in me. I got the gospel in me. I got the gospel in me.
It's the Gospel Revolution Pledge Drive. Here's how it works. You pledge, and we drive the gospel onto devices in over 185 countries. Go to gospelrevolution.com and pledge today.
Michael, you and I last night kind of spent, I think we spent about 3 hours on the phone together yesterday. And
Yes, we did.
We were just kind of overwhelmed by all of the information that is just sitting out there waiting for us to wade through regarding the 1,000-year reign of Christ.
Yes, and Daniel expressed to me not only our excitement, but just disgust almost for the fact that it's been there and nobody has taught it. Nobody let me repeat it again. Nobody has taught on this.
Yeah.
There are 3 ways in which the millennial reign is taught, regardless of Catholic, what denomination you're in. And that's the pre-millennial, post-millennial, and
amillennial.
Amillennial, yes, thank you. So amillennial, as Daniel has aptly explained to you, simply means they can move it around anywhere they want to.
Yeah, and it doesn't have to be specifically a 1,000-year period of time.
And not even 1,000 years. It's just whatever. And but then the others are all completely tied. All of them are tied to a second coming. And I got a phone call in tears from one of our longtime GRs, and who was a pastor himself. And I got that phone call. It was very moving. I'm telling you, the realization that the entire doctrine, regardless of what you teach about the second coming, all of it comes out of a misunderstanding of the 1,000-year reign. There would have never been a teaching on the second coming. So we can show you where Peter taught on the second coming. It's indicated also in Hebrews. And all of these guys had this 1,000-year reign wasn't chalked up, for them. Paul chalked it up and he did it all in one chapter. He mentions the reign, and he tells us exactly what the reign was, and tells us exactly how it was supposed to end, and tells us that it ended.
Yeah.
And it ended in in the conquering of death. The incredible beginning of the reign, of course, we found in Psalms 110:1. And then there's 2 or 3 other Psalms that gives us that same conclusion, as that this started at the anointing of David as king. And then it's 1,000 years, folks. We can't apologize for the fact that it's 1,000 years from there to the death, burial, and resurrection of Christ. That's just powerful. And finally, for me, I don't know why, Daniel, it hit me so hard that Revelation brings out the second death, and that who will not be hurt by the second death. And we were able to adequately and completely identify the first death was the one in Adam. And the last death, and everybody survived that death, right?
Yeah.
Everybody survived that death, but nothing that died the second death would ever survive. It would not be there won't be a second go around for those in the second death. And lo and behold, we had a list of those whose names were not written in the Lamb's Book of Life. And it's like, this is silly. This is silly. Why? But you see, when you have a concluded mindset that this is what you believe, and let me tell you, beliefs, if they are kept in the category of transitional thought, if beliefs are transitional thought, they help facilitate finding truth. If beliefs become established fact, your brain ceases to operate. And I've experienced it. Daniel's experienced it. We watched it in the lives of people, of our families, and around the whole world. And these facts mean nothing to people who believe something already, and a belief has turned into a fact. And the powerful thing I think I shared with folks about my new trainer and going through, did I share that with everybody or just you?
You mentioned it briefly last week.
Yeah, well, I don't want to go through it again. And his dad is a pastor and come out of a very difficult situation, and all types of condemnation and guilt on him. And it took 10 minutes, and we went through the book of John, and then read the end of the story at chapter 12, and then went to Romans chapter 10. Everybody that's whosoever believes in their heart and confesses with their mouth, we started there, and then then all the way down to faith comes by hearing, and hearing by the word. But I say unto you, and you should have seen this kid. He's 26 years old. And then I said, so if Paul says, but I say unto you, what is he referring to the last things? That means that's not what Paul wanted them to know. And then I said, so if after that, what should we find? We should find out what Paul wanted to know. But I was found of them that didn't ask, call, request, beg, plead, didn't do nothing. Even those that weren't a people, I made them my people. So in 10 minutes, the power of what you guys know as the foundation of the gospel revolution transformed a life. He will never, ever, never, ever, ever, never will he ever be deceived by that doctrine again. But to break through those beliefs, see, we know how to break through those beliefs, but we have to get people's attention to do that. So all the things that we do are I want to sanctify all of them by saying that the intent is to break through those beliefs, even if we have to say something pretty direct, point out something about what people say. We don't talk about anybody's character or individuality or who they are, because they are who we are. We are who they are. And but their teachings, Paul considered that to be open game, and we also consider it to be. And for those of you that are still just wanting everybody to just love on each other and get along, it ain't working. We need the truth. The truth must desperately be sought for and understood. And one of the greatest earmarks of standing and operating in truth is that you are willing to discuss it, and you're willing to change your mind.
So, Michael, it's not the direction we're headed today, but we do know where we're going next week. And we want to, along these lines of what Mel said about that if the conclusion of what we have understood about the 1,000-year reign of Christ is right, then there is no second coming. It is proof of that. Yeah. And Michael, next week, we want to specifically go into, though we've referenced it, though we have talked about it for years, we're going to go line by line through the 70 weeks of Daniel and show exactly where the time frame is, and the conclusion of the 70th week. We're going to prove for the first time in history, we are going to prove that the 1,000-year reign of Christ, the end of it is also the 70th week of Daniel.
Well, I tell you, the thing about the overarching view of the 1,000-year reign of Christ is that it's difficult to see Christ in it, except by directly accepting that the scriptures say he was the King of Kings and Lord of Lords. And that's what I was trying to get to that I never did in my last mouth out of control thing. But King of Kings and Lord of Lords, and it hit me. I know the time frame of King of Kings and Lord of Lords because Jesus leveled all other kings and authorities to having no authority or power over human beings whatsoever. So the only way Revelation can be talking about the King of Kings is that he was the king over the kings that were of the 1,000-year reign. And we know them by name. We know the kings that Jesus was king over. Yeah. We know them by name. And as we go into them, we can show you where Jesus was there influencing and directing. Because why? Because the 1,000-year reign was Christ himself setting the stage for himself to complete the life, the incarnate life of Yeshua Christ, and walked that through to the last 3 years of the history of the age that was in existence. And that age was the age of the 1,000-year reign was coming to an end. The age of Adam was coming to an end. There's probably more ends of the ages. What age? But so many of them, all of them came to an end. Really, the one that didn't happen is the end of the world, and the one that's not going to happen is the end of the world or the cosmos. The planet is not going to end. But we entered into a generation that is only one generation now. And so the power of this 70 weeks, so 70 weeks of Daniel are the 70 weeks of Daniel, and we're going to give this much away to you. They are the last 490 years of the 1,000-year reign.
Mm-hmm.
Should I have told them that?
That's good. That'll whet their appetite.
I'm telling you. So the 70 weeks of Daniel are the last 490 years of the 1,000-year reign. So what you can't see in historical value in the 1,000-year reign, God himself says, I'm going to put it all in historical, factual lead up to the cross in Daniel's prophecy about the last 490 years of the 1,000-year reign of Christ, just in case they might miss the end of the 1,000-year reign because it's not that visible to the eye. So he took a prophecy that every single thing is visible to the eye.
Yeah.
And but because belief systems will not allow people to see that sin has been destroyed, guess what? We get 70 of the 69 weeks of Daniel right up until before the cross, and then put on the brakes. Because if the last part of this is true, there is no reason for us to be doing what we're doing. And we are here to tell you, pastors, elders, deacons that pastors that passed, priests that priest, all of you kings that king, all of you are doing things that are completely unnecessary, unwarranted, and there is nothing about a calling of God for you to do it or be it.
But you got to wait till next week.
We'll let them stay in power for one more week, but then we're bringing them all down.
We are warning you.
You have the last week of Daniel. This is the last week of Daniel and Michael for all authority.
I love it. You know, we were talking, Michael, about the 1,000-year reign of Christ yesterday. And what is really interesting is all of these events that were recorded. And we're going to go into a little bit more building on what we talked about last week about King Saul and Saul of Tarsus.
Oh, my.
But, Michael, it's amazing how much of this story is told in the Hebrew Scriptures.
Yeah.
And, you know, Michael, these guys suffered under this 1,000-year period.
Of whom the world was not worthy.
Yes, exactly. But you know what? They did it for our sake because this is why we are frustrated. One of the reasons why we're frustrated with the Christian mystics is because they want to throw the story away.
Yeah.
The story is there for us. The story of these kings and priests and David and the 70 weeks of Daniel and the Babylonian exile and all of these, the 12 tribes of of Israel. They are there. The story is there so that we can understand the gospel today.
Yes.
They went through what they went through in specifically that 1,000-year period, but back all the way to Adam. They went through what they went through so that you and I today in 2024, in 3024, in 4024, in 5024 can understand the gospel.
Mm-hmm.
And it's there for us.
It's there for us. And we see a world completely free from Christianity or any other religion that is on the horizon now.
Mm-hmm.
The concepts now are in line to destroy mysticism, Catholicism, ismism. It doesn't make any difference. I mean, it's all in line to capture the attention of every religion because of its just the sheer logic of it.
Mm-hmm.
Now, when Hurricane Milton, was it, or
Milton?
I think it's Milton or Wilton. Gosh, we have so many of them that I lose track, and I don't live in Florida. So, but we are aware of the devastation that has taken place in Florida now, as of this broadcast. But as that hurricane was approaching, I happened to jump on Facebook, and I'm telling you, the feeds were loaded with, in the name of Jesus, I command this storm to go. One of them was, we have power and authority over the weather. And so therefore we're going to command that. Now it already dropped from 5 to 4 to 3, and they were commanding that it drop to 2. It's like, you know what? A bunny rabbit has more power than that. I mean, if it's going down to its natural progression at the time, and it was just, we are the powerful, we are speakers, sayers, and shakers, and doers, but it hit the coast at a Category 3. And I went back, and all the posts were gone. And I mean, if you can make it go down from a 3 to a 2, why not just make it go away?
Yeah. I remember someone asked me one time, this was back in my Christian days, they said, instead of just praying for a storm to go away, why don't you just pray that all unnecessary weather go away? And that one left me quiet.
Yeah.
That's a fair question.
Well, they took you outside your vacuum, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that is someplace that we are uncomfortable with in our beliefs. We don't want to be outside our vacuum. We just don't want to be there. And in a vacuum, there's no contradictions. In a vacuum, there's Ethan has been explaining to me, in a vacuum, there's no resistance. And man, I tell you, we don't want outside our vacuum, because as crazy as the Word of Faith movement was, we were quite comfortable there. But you know why? Because we had no resistance. Yeah. All the resistance was outside, not inside.
Mm-hmm. And they were just full of doubt and unbelief. So they didn't
we wrote them off. So, so it all is true in a vacuum. And even when it fails, we all have a reason, an explanation as to why it didn't. Well, we curse this cancer in Jesus' name. They end up dying. Well, the Lord's got better plans, Don't question the Lord. The thing we're saying is don't question our teachings. And I see you're in agony just me bringing this up. But folks, you don't have to live like that. You don't have to live there, and you don't have to live in a vacuum. But if you choose to, you can. And all information that you gather will affirm that what you think is true on any subject. Mm-hmm. If you do not go looking for contradictory information to your own beliefs, you are not looking for truth.
I watched Michael. Disney did it to me again here last week.
You cried again, dude.
I did. There's a new movie out. It's actually the second one. I never seen the first one, but the girls have, and they wanted me to watch the second one. It just came out. It's called Inside Out. And it's all about this girl growing up and going through puberty and all the emotions. And so it's basically like the emotions in her brain as she encounters different aspects in life. But in the movie, they portray how all of these emotions feed into a belief system. And that belief system creates how the person responds to all of this. So before she goes through puberty, she has this image of herself that believes that she's good enough and that she's a good person and all of this. And then as she goes through and experiences new emotions, anxiety is one of them, which was, just the way they do this in Disney style is really beautiful. And they have these characters playing out these emotions. And they fed in and created a new image of herself. But at the end of the movie, the greatest thing is that she accepted all of it in the fact that I am a good person, but sometimes I get anxious. I am a good person, but sometimes I get mad. And that belief system totally changed and directed the way of her life. But at the end, she began to see everything as a whole. And rather than just seeing part of her, part of reality that would direct her life, now she was able to see everything and then make decisions based upon that. Great story.
Yeah, and you cried.
I did.
It's a good thing you didn't have little boys. It's a dad's crying again.
Abby just looks up at me and,
oh, daddy. So anyway, I didn't mean that to sound dismissive anyway. I mean, just like, okay, well, now that we're done with that.
Again, crying again.
This issue of beliefs has never left me. It hit me several years ago. And every time, just like when I sat down and went through with David, John chapter 10 again, and then Paul's euphoric conclusion that God concluded all in unbelief that he might have mercy upon all. Oh my gosh, it washes my soul. It washes my brain. And I realized, gosh, I think I picked up 2 or 3 beliefs in the last few weeks. And I need to challenge that. I need to look for contrary information. And I want to say this once again. If you believe something, I don't care whether it's what the category is. If you only listen to the people who agree with you, you are a Judaizer about that subject. You need to look for and listen to the opposing side of that. Now, I realize that many times it's hard to find somebody that can speak clearly the opposing side. But if you're looking for somebody stupid to represent the other side, you'll find somebody stupid. But look for somebody who has a little bit of sense that can represent that side. Because the news media already, whichever side they are on, they'll present the stupid person representing the other side, saying stupid things. And then the other side will pick stupid people who view the other side to represent the stupid position. And it all it does is just continually feed into a bias. And folks, I just like to tell people around the world, and I just refuse to take my corner. And it seems the whole world wants you to take your corner. I'm not going to do it. And well, Mike, you got to decide this. I don't have to decide anything, folks. My position is to question everything. And not just one side of everything. My position is to question everything. The things that people think they know about what I think, they don't know. Let me assure you, because even people of that persuasion, I have questions for them that they can't answer for me. And on both persuasions. And it's not that you just simply use the Socratic method where you keep asking questions. The Socratic method is a wonderful tool, but it can be overused just like any form of methodology. But it is a means to get beyond where you are, where you begin to question everything, and every answer has a question, and every question has a question. And I mean, you get around somebody like that, they will absolutely frustrate the living daylights out of you, because you begin to not have any answers for the air that you breathe. You know, but it's good in that it will dislodge persuasions that may not be true. Can you accept that in our spiritual realm of persuasion, including the gospel revolution, we may have concepts that need to be dislodged.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if they need to be dislodged, it may be like cleaning teeth. I mean, when I go in to have my teeth cleaned, speaking pleasant subjects, they about have to straddle my head. I mean, I love having my teeth cleaned. I normally get it done every 3 months instead of 6. But most people hate having their teeth cleaned. Man, when they get in there and I can hear that scraper going and they're it's like, oh, that's like scratching my back. And it's like,
you're weird.
I know. So I like getting the grime out. I like get the plaque out, because you don't know when plaque has set up in your brain pertaining to a subject.
Mm.
You don't know.
Yeah.
You don't know. So because you don't know when that happens, only you can challenge you.
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't, you're going to happily, merrily stay right where you are.
Yeah.
But if what you know has no questions, and you can bat down every single question about it, man, we love it when somebody asks a question. We say, wow, I don't know the answer to that.
Mm-hmm.
But we're going to study and try to prove you wrong. No, honestly, that's not where we are. That's not where Daniel is. And Daniel knows that's not where I am. We are ready to change our minds at anything. We don't care what it is. So keep your brain mellow. I mean, don't develop a melon brain, but keep your brain mellow, pliable. Keep yourself to where that these hard line views about anything, that they still are questionable.
Mm-hmm.
You've got to stay there. You just have to.
Michael, last week we looked at King Saul and Saul of Tarsus, and we looked at the similarities between their story. And also we talked about how it was possible that the Apostle Paul's life was still within that category of predestination.
Yes.
Because he was born prior to the cross.
Yeah.
And his whole life, as we know of the Bible characters, that their lives were predestined for a reason, for a purpose, to bring out the fulfillment of the 1,000-year reign of Christ, which is the death, burial, and resurrection of Christ, and all that brings forward. And how we saw that there was a very similar story between King Saul and Saul of Tarsus, but it was mirrored. One accepted and one rejected, and one brought in. Both were related to King David, and both were bookends to the 1,000-year reign of Christ. And what a wonderful understanding. And in that, what we saw also was the relationship between two specific tribes.
Yes.
And that was the tribe of Judah, which was King David and Jesus, and the tribe of Benjamin, which was Saul of Tarsus. And these two tribes throughout history, and this is one of the things we want to kind of look at a little bit today, is the significance of these two tribes throughout biblical history, especially during the 1,000-year reign of Christ.
Mm-hmm. There are a lot of details that need to be filled in here, and I think that everyone will enjoy this, Daniel. The difference, so we look at some differences between the two. Both King Saul and Saul of Tarsus opposed David.
Mm-hmm.
The King David, and also the son of David, the King of Kings. So both opposed. One started out in agreement with and in favor of God, and then fell out. One started just the opposite, and then went into the favor of God, and expounded the gospel like nobody else has ever done before. So we follow this main line picture, and I still find it strange that that all 12 tribes are mentioned in the Revelation as part of the foundation of the New Jerusalem.
Mm-hmm.
Because after King Saul, there were 10 of the tribes that broke off and went to the north and basically became a conglomerate of unidentifiable tribes. They are referred to by the scriptures as Ephraim and the lost tribes.
I always wondered what Ephraim was.
Isn't that amazing? I did too. Now I know exactly who Ephraim is. Ephraim is of those 10 tribes that broke off to the north. So when we study the 1,000-year reign, we are only talking about 2 tribes, and the tribe of Judah and the tribe of Benjamin. And they had a few from the tribe of the Levites. Now, there were, no matter which direction a bunch of Jewish tribes went, some Levites went with them because they had to carry on the temple worship. It sounds as though there were Levites that went north, but according to what we've been able to research, there were Levites that were there. We find out that King Saul was a request of the people. God was answering their request. Everybody's got a king,
Yeah.
So why can't we have a king? We want a king. And because they had been under the judges of Moses. So Moses comes on the scene, and Moses not only gives the law, he's the only one there to adjudicate the law. And somewhere in the story, Ethan's researching all of this out now. They say, well, this is crazy. All right. So we need to put judges of the law over certain groups and amounts of people. And so then you get the book of Judges, and you get the 1st and 2nd Samuels and 1st and 2nd Kings and all of those, where they're adjudicating the law of Moses. And but then instead of judges, the people of Israel got upset because we have judges. We don't want judges. We want a king like everybody else. So what they wanted was for everything to go back under one authority again.
Mm-hmm.
And that was their request. And then with David coming on the scene after Saul, then we find the beginning of the 1,000-year reign of the line of the tribe of Judah. And you see the Benjamin's tribe, this correlation, and we really encourage any of you, if you have any research material and look at the correlation between Judah and Benjamin, and the only other ones was that they kept some Levites.
Mm-hmm.
And we found out that the Levites, some of them were in exile, but also along with the tribe of Judah and the tribe of Benjamin that left to escape the exile, whether just before, during, or after, nobody knows for sure. But we're back in the single digits of centuries when this happened. And so they left there, and they also took, a handful of Levites with them so that they could practice Judaism and the temple form of its worship without the temple. But they took them into Spain and Portugal. So, and now I'm going to talk about my ancestry again, which you always have to twist my arm to get me to do this. But Daniel demanded it, so I will succumb. I've known for a decade that I was 1 to 3% Jewish, and that they were from Spain. I didn't know what a Sephardic Jew was. And now that we've gotten into this, I now know that the Sephardics, which is a very small percentage of the Jewish community, which is the Ashkenazi Jews, which are, and none of this is definitive lines, because everything's been blurred, right? As it should be after the cross. However, we know that the folks that marched across northern Africa, Judah and Benjamin, they are what makes up the Sephardic Jewish population. So I now know that I am either a descendant of the 1 to 3%, and my ancestry is either of the tribe of Judah or the tribe of Benjamin.
Mm.
So I wanted it to be Benjamin, and it still might be. I'm still holding out, but I don't think there'll ever be a way to know. But can you imagine knowing that you are of one of the two tribes of Israel that stayed together all the way from the throne of David?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm over the moon about it.
Yeah.
And, but of the two tribes, Judah and Benjamin, and then of course the Levites that went with them for the practicing of, but these two tribes that split and left during the exile, they were either basically of one of two tribes, but the volume of the number of the tribe of Judah is voluminously larger than the small tribe of Benjamin.
Mm.
So the greatest likelihood, even though I was wanting to be of the lineage of Paul, but I had to settle for being of the lineage of Jesus.
No.
Yeah, most likely, I come from the tribe of Judah. And I was a little disappointed. But I mean, these are things that people couldn't know before now, folks. And how much better does that make me than somebody else? Well, I can't even measure how much better that makes me than somebody else. It doesn't mean anything in the wash, right? So because all of us came from somewhere, all of you would be just blown away if I were able to do your ancestry. You'd find out things that you didn't know about yourself, as I have, because these things are that I love research, and that's why this works easy. So of this 1,000-year reign, I actually have ancestors that just dropped right out of the middle of the 1,000-year reign.
Of course you do.
Of course I do.
So if I'm understanding this timeline right, and going back to some of the other things that we learned, so when King Saul was king, these tribes I don't think were unified yet. I think they all 12 unified under King David.
Yes.
But it was then when David's son Solomon became king that then the kingdom split. And that's where we get this northern kingdom and the southern kingdom.
Yes.
And the northern kingdom would be the 10 other tribes, and the southern kingdom would be the two tribes of Judah, Benjamin, as you said, with a little mix of the Levites in there so that they could remain in temple worship.
Yes.
And then from that point on, all of the reference in from King Solomon all the way up to Jesus, all of the references of Israel and the prophecies and all of that are centered around those two tribes.
Yes, it's not about the 12 tribes. In fact, it will distinguish for you during those prophecies that these promises are made to Judah and Judah and Judah and Judah and Israel and Israel and Israel. And also I will reach out and grab all of Ephraim and bring them in. That is the only thing you're going to hear about, the 10, they call them the 10 lost tribes of Israel. And I used to wonder, when did they get lost, and who would lose a whole tribe, you know?
Yeah.
And, but they were after they left, they fell long before, I don't know how long before, but long before that Israel went into captivity, those two tribes and the Levites that stayed behind, they fell under exile to Babylon, but the others had been in exile to Persia. I'm not saying that right.
Yeah. So the 10 tribes were under the Persian
Empire, right?
Yeah.
All right. It just didn't sound right at the last minute. So they were under the Persian Empire, already in bondage long before the this tribe of Judah and Benjamin. Those two tribes are the history. So when you study all of the prophets, if you're going to hear about all of the tribes of Israel, you'll have to see the name Ephraim or lost tribes. I'm not sure that the term lost tribes shows up. I think maybe even the term Ephraim may mean that. I don't know. I'm talking out of my head right now. But anyway, I don't know where else I would talk about. But anyway.
Well, there's a saying.
Well, yes, there is a saying. Yes, there is a saying. And you know what they say about sayings. So anyway. But anyway, so the picture of this is important, and Daniel and I are doing our best to show you to let what we have been shown through just reading the scriptures, and with the help of many of the other GRs, we are doing this so that we don't miss the absolute conclusion of the 1,000-year reign. Mm-hmm. I am absolutely convinced that the whole reason for the 490-year prophecy of Daniel was to put a double mark at the end of the 1,000-year reign.
Yeah.
And isn't it strange that all of Christianity does not accept the end of the 70th week of Daniel, and they also do not accept the end of the 1,000-year reign being the death, burial, and resurrection of Jesus Christ.
Mm. My goodness.
Therein lies all Christianity.
Yep. So the Southern Kingdom, Michael, the capital, this is what we learned, is that the capital of the Southern Kingdom was Jerusalem. Not the other tribes, but it was these two. And specifically, Benjamin kind of was absorbed by Judah. So because Judah, as you said, was the larger tribe, Benjamin, their alignment stayed with Judah. So I think even in the prophecies, a lot of times it's more directed towards Judah. But because of that alignment that stayed in there, it's understood that it's Judah and Benjamin.
We are led to believe that every time that it talks about Israel, that it's talking about Judah and Benjamin. Both. Mm-hmm. Yes.
And their capital being Jerusalem. So post these exiles that happened, you have the northern kingdom that was under the Assyrians and the Persians for a much longer time than Judah and Benjamin were under Babylon.
Yes.
That I think the Babylonian exile was only like a generation, I think.
About 70 years, I think.
Yeah. And then they came back to Jerusalem. Now, when the Northern Kingdom, when they finally got freed, they kind of scattered all over the place.
All over the world.
Yep. And they were absorbed, and they kind of intermingled, and they kind of
intermarried
and joined all of the different races of people, whereas Judah and Benjamin remained true, and they came back to Jerusalem, and then that's when we have the rebuilding of the temple.
Right. Also, we'll mention that the two major branches of Judaism, Ashkenazi and Sephardic. Sephardic is a very small percentage of the Jewish community. Now, I cannot tell you one whit about the Ashkenazi, where it'd be very easy to do research on. I just don't know yet. We've been overwhelmed with information about and sticking to the subject with what about the 1,000-year reign. But it's very interesting. Anytime that you can take something and kind of say, okay, we can put that over here because it has nothing to do with this.
Mm-hmm.
That causes the focus to become clearer when you eliminate that which is not a part of it.
Yeah.
So now we're not saying anything against the other 10 tribes. We're saying to you that for the means of the 1,000-year reign, we must do what God himself did and set them aside to understand the realities and the clearest focus we can get of the 1,000-year reign of Christ, not the 1,000-year reign of Yeshua Christ, because Yeshua Christ was not and did not become incarnate until the last 30 years of the. Well, I'm not supposed to say that right now. We'll go back to this, and the last 30 years of the 1,000-year reign.
Yeah, and then in this return back to Jerusalem from the Babylonian exile, Nehemiah 11 actually references specifically these two tribes, Judah and Benjamin, and they were the two tribes that worked together along with the Levites who were in this group to rebuild the temple and rebuild Jerusalem and get back going in the direction that they were before the exile.
Yes, and without Levites, there was no need to rebuild the temple.
Right, exactly.
And also this, now I don't know how it was with the others between Benjamin and Judah, if their lines were so required to stay so completely pure. But I know with the Levites, they could marry, but they had to marry within their tribe because they needed a pure line of Levitical priesthood. And the bloodline was very important, which is very interesting when you switch that bloodline from a physical to an incarnate bloodline. With what Hebrews tells us about the priesthood of Christ, who of course did not come from the tribe of Levi, of which the tribe of Judah has no mention, as Hebrews says. There is no mention of such a thing, a high priest coming out of the tribe of Judah. What's wrong with you? So all of these things, it's so interesting once you see the blinding that God instituted to where that they couldn't see. All of these things, just like where Jesus was born, and it was a little sleight of hand about where he was born exactly. And then there was a sleight of hand about where Levites, where the priesthood comes. It's Levite. And then suddenly this priesthood switches in its final hour, and literally its final hour switches to a spiritual priesthood, which is of the line of the tribe of Judah.
Very interesting.
Oh, it's really quite amazing, actually. And in which we think that this is true, a final presentation of the final sacrifice, not in a temple made with hands, but before God himself, in the presence of all of humanity. Everybody made a trip to heaven at one time, folks. And the best that we can tell. And then after this final sacrifice was offered in heaven with his own blood, not the blood of others, because the Levites had to offer sacrifices for their own sins and then for the other people. But this high priest did not have to offer sacrifice for his sin because he had none, because he was born of a virgin. Yeah. He was not without sin because he broke no laws. He was without sin because he was not of the line of Adam. And as far as his father's side, there was an intervention into that. There's another little sleight of hand about the gospel. The Solomon's descendants were cursed from ever occupying the throne ever again. And Joseph was a direct line from Solomon. So how does Jesus become the king of the Jews? The bloodline is there, but the bloodline itself from Solomon down to Joseph had been cursed. But Jesus was not born of Adam's seed.
No.
So there's all of this last minute. Okay, everybody shift positions, and bam! All of a sudden, it all comes into clear focus. And it's all done in the twinkling of an eye. In the twinkling of an eye. But all of it is so clearly set up and pre-planned and predestined. And now, as we have embraced, even King or Saul of Tarsus, the name Paul was predestined. And was called, even according to the encounter in Book of Acts. We rag on the Book of Acts as to many of its accuracies and inaccuracies, but it doesn't mean there's not some things in there that are accurate. We know that Paul said that he was called by God to do what he was doing from his mother's womb.
Mm-hmm.
And we went into that the last time, and we know that according to Paul, not according to somebody else, that Jesus spoke to him and said, Saul, Saul, why persecutest thou me? And, that had to mean something to Saul. He knew his namesake. He knew his namesake persecuted David.
Mm-hmm.
Can you imagine what thunderclap must have hit inside of him? Knowing his tribe. He was a tribe of the tribe of Benjamin, and he let everybody know it in his own testimony. A Jew of Jews, a Hebrew of Hebrews. Touching the law, can't find anything wrong with me.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm of the tribe of Benjamin. So he knew that he was named after the man who persecuted David. And suddenly he's been looking for the manifestation of the Messiah. He's been looking for the manifestation of King David. He's looked for it all of his life. He studied the scriptures. And now one who is dead is speaking to him and saying, what? Why are you persecuting me?
So, as you mentioned there, Paul identified himself as a member of the tribe of Benjamin. And that's a very, throughout all the years that I studied the Bible, I thought, okay, whoop-de-doo, you're part of the tribe of Benjamin. But now it makes sense because it was very specific that his lineage remained with Israel. Yeah. And all of the prophecies and all of that, he was a part of that. His tribe was a part of that. And so that's vitally important. And then also to see that his relation to the Lion of the tribe of Judah, Yeshua, to see that alignment here at the end of the 1,000-year reign, as opposed to the other disciples. As you mentioned, and Revelation paints this picture of all of these 12 tribes being represented. And Michael, it's interesting that as we have studied in the New Testament, we're now seeing how it almost is an image of what happened during the 1,000-year reign, where you had these 10 tribes that left Israel. You've also have these disciples that have left the understanding of the teachings of Christ.
Yes.
But there was one who remained true.
Yes. And we have a replica of events from a 1,000-year event down to a 3-year event.
My God.
And so the 1,000-year event manifested in a 3-year event. And you have King Saul at the beginning of the 1,000-year reign of Christ, and you have Saul of Tarsus at the end of the 1,000-year reign of Christ, who has now begun an eternal reign. Yeah. Right?
And you have the unification of all of the tribes at the beginning of the 1,000-year reign. And then you have the disbursement, and then you have the reuniting of not only the 12 tribes, but also all the Gentiles too.
All the Gentiles. It is all laid out so emphatically, and I mean, it's just there's no way to. We try to find things that can contradict this, and that we cannot find it. I mean, I wish we could, but so if we do a type and shadow thing, is there a type and shadow that was in place of the disciples being a part of everything, and then on the other side of the cross, or the other side of the temple, that on the other side of it, they're not a part of it at all. And yes, it's a perfect picture. Yeah. Is it appropriate? I don't know, but it's there, and it fits the type and shadow. Now, why would their names be in part of the foundation of the New Jerusalem? Because just like the disciples, I said this 35 to 40 years ago about the disciples. And I mean, this is before I knew much, except that there was a difference between law and grace. But I had understood law and grace. And I understood that the law was given to be failed. I knew that. I got that. One thing I had, the law was given to be failed at. And then we have one disciple representing each of the 12 tribes of Israel. And what do we have with them? We have a pre-planned blindness that was upon them. We know up until the cross, there was a pre-planned blindness on them, and understanding was blocked. They could not understand. They could not see. None of them believed because they weren't supposed to.
Wow.
That is the conclusion of John in the 12th chapter of John. Why? Because God decided that he wanted to do it himself. He's just one of those, I don't need your help. I'll do it by myself. He's just one of those kind. And so the power of this, do we have the type and shadow that on the other side of this, that one understands it and the rest never do? We have that type and shadow arranged for us within the 1,000-year reign of Christ, and then compressed down into the 3 to 3.5 year earthly ministry of Christ.
So, Michael, we plugged some of this information into ChatGPT, and I want to read its conclusion of all that we have fed into this. This is beautiful. Saul of Tarsus' transformation into Paul marks the completion of a 1,000-year period, with the tribes of Judah and Benjamin remaining connected from the time of King Saul to the time of Jesus and Paul. In Paul's writings, he emphasized the breaking down of the division between Jew and Gentile, which could also symbolize the ultimate unity between Judah and Benjamin through Christ. In conclusion, over the 1,000 years from King Saul to Saul of Tarsus, also known as Paul, the tribe of Benjamin and the tribe of Judah remain closely linked in Israel's history. While there were times of tension, such as Saul's pursuit of David, their union became more solidified over time. The tribe of Benjamin's continued alignment with Judah after the kingdom divided, their return together from exile, and Paul's role in spreading the message of Christ from the tribe of Judah all reflect how these two tribes manifested a significant and intertwined relationship throughout this period.
And, one thing about this is this is a result of asking it questions about these things. And, and we've tried it. If you say something that just is factually not true, it will say, this position based on this, and this cannot be supported. Like if we tried to insert that the part of the tribes that went to the north, that they were a part of the tribes that were in Jerusalem, it would correct you on that. So we just, Daniel and I both felt that the impact that this last session we had was so palpable for people. There's an intimacy, because we've had such a powerful intimacy with the Apostle Paul in understanding his contradictions to the other disciples, that coming to realize that he was a part of that. And, I've always thought, maybe I'm going to have to change my perspective that all things were fulfilled at the death, burial, and resurrection. And maybe it extends out a little bit like our 70 AD friends. I've considered that so many times, Daniel. And then when we started going into the 70 weeks of Daniel, I thought, well, I mean, is this going to include the destruction of the physical temple? And you're going to have to wait till next week to find that out. But we've considered it all. I mean, for you guys that agree with us on some things, but not all things, there's been things that a lot of folks in the GR have changed my mind about. And very drastically so, Don Bartlett being one of them. And just amazing the transition that took place in my brain. And I defended my position, and Don presented his, and I felt like I won the debate. Mm-hmm. Flew him down to my house, and he stayed with me for several days and taught me how to fix ribs. and I've been threatened to doing it for Daniel every time he comes down, and I never do. But so changing our mind is not an issue. So for folks that are offended at us for our stand, I'm telling you, I think it's coming more from the insecurity of your own stand that you're offended by us. Because there's nothing you can't talk to us about. There's nothing you cannot send an email and say, well, I question this and question that. Now, once we realize you are in a position that we're not even on the same chalkboard, we're not even in the same universe. We're not going to pursue an ongoing a battle. It's like when we start one of those things, if you change our mind about something or you change your mind about something, then it's worth going on to the next point. If we both stay on the point that we are, there's no need in dragging this out because that means we both each come from a different perspective, right or wrong on either part, that to try to continue is not going to work. Just like me sitting here with David for that 10 minutes. I was either going to be able to show him that believing is not a part of salvation, or I wasn't going to be able to. Mm-hmm. And it was successful. So, and we go from there. And I cannot tell you the number of situations where that, goodness, I've been on the phone with Mel, and Mel has changed my mind and helped me understand some of the parables that I didn't have a clear understanding of, or probably no understanding of it at all. These things are vitally important to us because there's only one outcome that is acceptable, and that is that we know and understand the truth.
So, Michael, that was the conclusion of Benjamin and Judah. Now, before we close out, let's discuss a little bit here about these other 10 tribes, because Jewish and Christian eschatology is filled with, quote, prophecies, unquote, about these 10 tribes being gathered together and restored. Now, Michael, in the 1,000-year reign, there is no historical event that took place where these tribes came back, reunited in Jerusalem, and built the temple together and continued temple worship and all that. That never happened. Yeah. And I don't think it ever will.
No, either that or it happened in a spiritual sense.
Yes. Come on.
And neither are the Gentiles gathering to go to the top of the mountain to worship God, Mm-hmm. But the fact of it is that all of the powerful historic background resulted in an emphatic spiritual transformation. A transformation that caused God to be man and man to be God and heaven to be earth and earth to be heaven.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know how much more complete of a transition you're looking for, but if you're looking for dualism, if you want a God to serve, if you want a God to try to get favors from, all the people that were on Facebook and rebuking and praying, and we're the people of God, we can do anything. And thanks for playing. It didn't work, folks, and nobody ever gets called out. And all this does is they all just disappear and go back into their vacuum.
Mm-hmm.
See, they take advantage of historical situations and they insert thinking that if it turns out that way, they get affirmation points. But the fact of it is they should have been right. I kind of thought that this hurricane would drop to a category 2 based on my keeping track of hurricanes. I love weather systems and hate their destruction, of course. But I was, in fact, I had already told David, I said, it looks like this hurricane may even drop to a category 2, thankfully. And, but I was wrong. But you know what? I didn't pray about it. But I know a whole bunch of people out there who are trying to move this hurricane with their faith.
Mm-hmm.
I remember Norval Hayes. This again is 40-something years ago. He was talking about his property there in Crystal River, Florida. And he bought this junky little motel and it made it sound like it was the Taj Mahal when he talked about it. But anyway, he had this property here and he was telling people, it's my property. I got authority over my property. And this hurricane was coming right straight toward us. All the weathermen said, it's coming right over Crystal River. And he was exaggerating what the weathermen had said. And it was at a time 40 years ago when they did not have as much information about the influences in the upper atmosphere over the direction of these hurricanes. They've gotten really pretty good at it, even though not exact. There never will be an exact. So, because the equation's changing all the time with influences in weather. So Norval says he went out and he turned his face toward the hurricane and said, I rebuke you, hurricane. I command you to go another direction. It's like, if you've got authority over it, make it die.
Yeah.
And he said, went back in, turned on the news. News reporter came on and said, something drastic has happened. The hurricane that was headed for Tampa is now headed to Tallahassee, Florida. And Norval said, all I said was, God have mercy on the people in Tallahassee.
Oh, my God.
That's like, and in his vacuum, that was acceptable.
Mm-hmm.
It was acceptable to all the people who heard it. Please try not to hear things in a vacuum.
Mm.
Don't do that to yourself. Don't hear things where there is no opposition or a counter thought to that.
Michael, I think we went to Bible school today.
Well, it was, and I'm so glad I never, pardon me, I'm really glad I never went to Bible school because I'd have had that much more to unlearn. And this really has been an unlearning experience for everyone. And Daniel, you went to Bible school. I want you to measure what has happened in last show about Saul and Paul. Last show and this show that we followed up on. Compare that to anything that you learned about the scriptures. I know they didn't really teach the scriptures. They did as a token so that you could have a historical perspective. But you tell us, what's this been like these last 2 weeks as a graduate who has a doctorate?
So at Rhema, we had classes about Bible history, specifically Old Testament. We went through the northern kingdoms and the southern kingdoms and all the kings and priests and high priests and the prophets and all of that. We went through all of that. But Michael, it was built within, as we've been referring to it this episode, as a vacuum.
Yeah.
It was all about, we're learning this so that we can have faith to move mountains.
Yeah.
And that's what it was all about. It wasn't about understanding why these events took place or that there's a story here that tells about the Messiah. Of course, there was no story there to them about Jesus fulfilling all prophecy and all of this coming to an end or to a conclusion. And Michael, in the 2 years I spent at Rhema and then moving on to Life Christian University, where I got my doctorate. Now, in Life Christian University, we had zero teaching about Bible history. Zero.
Really?
It was 100% New Testament doctrine. 100%. And there was none of this. There was no historical teaching. There was none of that. And that's where I got my doctorate degree.
Wow.
There was zero teaching. We referenced verses and all of that, but it was all about New Testament word of faith doctrine. There was nothing there about Bible history and the kings and understanding the northern kingdom and the southern kingdom, blah, blah, blah. Rhema did more of that, but I think we had maybe 1 or 2 classes per semester, basically on the history. But Michael, I feel that in the 2 years I spent at Rhema and then the concluding years that I spent getting my doctorate through Life Christian University, I feel that I have learned more about Bible history in the last 2 weeks than I did in the whole time of obtaining my doctorate degree from an accredited Bible university.
And isn't it odd, Daniel, would you also say that this is true, that in that Bible history, you've learned more about the gospel than what they taught you about the gospel?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Like I said, in the word of faith, in those word of faith circles, it was all about having faith to move mountains.
Just like our friends on Facebook who were ready to reduce the hurricane from the category 3 to the category 2.
Yeah.
I don't know. Sometimes I look at those things and I think, well, maybe this will wake them up. Nothing's going to wake them up, Daniel. To wake up, you have to choose to wake up. You have to choose to challenge yourself. I will never be able to emphasize that no matter what subject you are on. The only reason we have breakthroughs in medicine and medication and all of this is because people choose to look at opposing information. Because you've got to get rid of all of that which does not work to be able to present something to people that does work.
So I just pulled up here, just out of curiosity. This is
you do it every time.
I do it. This is the current first year program at Rhema. These are the classes. Now listen to the titles of these classes: Angels and Demons, Biblical Doctrines, Biblical Interpretation, The Blood Covenant, Christ the Healer, Critical Thinking. I didn't have that one. That would be interesting to see that one. Dispensational Truths. Now that one is going to focus on end time dispensations.
Yes.
Ephesians, Faith Library, Financial Management, Gifts of the Spirit, the Gospel of John, the Holy Spirit, World Missions, Marriage, Family, and Ministry, New Testament Survey. And here are the only 2 in this whole list that have anything to do with what we talked about today. Old Testament people, but listen to it. It's not just the Old Testament people, but it's Old Testament people of faith. So they look at all of the people and their faith. Old Testament survey. Now that one would be the one where you would go over the northern kingdom, southern kingdoms, and all that. Pentecostal and charismatic perspectives, principles of prayer, righteousness, spiritual growth principles, submission and authority, understanding grace. So in the first year, there's only one class in the whole year. That's more than I remember, or less than I remember in the whole year. And let's look at the second year. Acts, Believers of the Authority, Bible Doctrines, Biblical Perspectives of the Help Ministry, Christianity and World Religion, Church History. Now, church history doesn't go into the Old Testament. It starts in the book of Acts, is where that one started. The Doctrine of the Church, same thing. Faith Library 2, Galatians, Pastoral Care, Life of Honor, Ministerial Ethics, Minister's Heart, Ministry Gifts, Pastoral Epistles, People Skills, Personal Evangelism, Psalms. That's a new one. I didn't have that one. Pulpit Speech, Redemptive Reality, Romans, Spirituology, Spiritual Leadership Principles, and Wisdom Literature.
Spirituology?
Spiritology. Yeah, I don't know what that.
Spiritology. Wow.
So again, each year, in only each one of these years, this one you have the Book of Psalms, which I know is all going to be, they look to Jesus at, finding Jesus in Psalms, but of course it's going to be futuristic fulfillment of those things. Well, Michael, yeah, in 2 years at Rhema, you get 2 classes that really have anything to do with the Old Testament.
Yeah, and they would absolutely never tell you that I was a descendant of the Sephardic Jews either. And that just is not a good Bible school.
And Michael, not to take advantage of the moment, but I'm going to take advantage of the moment. My dad spent several $1,000s for me to go to Rhema, and learn nothing that we have taught in the last 2 podcasts here at the Gospel Revolution. And I say that to say, in light of the pledge drive going on, I think Don said it perfectly. Value for value. Look at the value of the information that is coming out. Any one of the podcasts, Michael and I were talking about this the other day, any one of the topics of the podcast that we release on a weekly basis, any one of them has the information that could tear down all of religion in all of the world every single week. And we do it every single week. And I'm not saying that to toot our own horn. I'm just saying that's the power of the gospel.
It is.
That's the power of the message that we are releasing to the world. And we just want your help. If you can help us financially, then we can get this message in as front of many ears as we can. And we can do that. And just look within the Gospel Revolution, all of the pastors that have heard this teachings over the years, me being one of them, and the freedom that it brought in. I mean, I'm not a stupid person, Michael. I have a doctorate of theology in understanding word of faith, Christian principles and doctrines. And all of that came to nothing by just a couple episodes of understanding. I mean, that's those 7 pillars that you and Don went through. One by one, tore down the pillars of my understanding. And Michael, that is the benefit of investing in the Gospel Revolution. I feel that I am forever indebted to those who have supported the Gospel Revolution over the years. I am forever indebted to all of those because of the freedom that I experience, and that freedom that I can now transfer down to my children and teach them and their children and their children, and we're set up for a long-term revolution here. And this is so valuable that you need to pick up that phone today and call Jeff and make that pledge, because we're doing something great.
I completely agree. My gosh, this has just been a wonderful 2 weeks for us, and I think for the whole family. According to the feedback that I've gotten, some in tears, and these are guys that have been around for years and years and years, and pastors and right when you think you understand everything that you need to understand, you come to this unbelievable point to where it feels like you know nothing. And that the whole horizon of understanding of the gospel is in front of us. And I couldn't be happier. I'm at a stage in my life where I'm looking to Daniel. I'm looking to all of the young guys. I was talking to Jackie Barnard, and he and I were talking about the end of our lives. I've not had conversations with people about the end of my life, but here I am. I'm not going to be a fool and sit back, and I'm going to live to be 120. I will have problems with God if I live to be 120. I don't want that. I don't need it. It's whatever the continuation of righteousness is, that's what I'm going to experience. So is everyone else. But I have no clue what's going to be like once this life is gone. But my focus, I just cannot emphasize to people, I have zero focus on what's going to happen after I die. Zero.
Mm.
All of my focus is what in the world can I do to support Daniel and to support Ethan and to support, Jackie and I have already written ourselves out of the picture, but still our whole heart. I mean, when you got two old men on phone in tears about the power of the gospel, who have studied and researched and their lives, and still there's things that we're learning. But my investment is in the people. I don't know which direction David's life's going to take, but I know. But I told him the day we stood up from this table I'm sitting at right now. I told him, I said, you will never be the same again.
Mm.
You'll never be able to think the things you thought before.
Yeah.
And there's times that I'll do a little rehearsal about, so how many people have made it into Christ? Is it those that believe? And he said, no, it's those that didn't believe. And I'll drill that until he gets interested in something else.
Mm-hmm.
But if he doesn't, we'll stick on that.
Yeah.
But we'll make sure that gets settled once and for all and forever. So my sights are in the next generation and the generation after that and the generation after that. I have no inclinations about, I can't see myself being, I know there's no punishment. So I kind of am absolutely convinced there's no reward.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what it is, folks. I just don't. I know it's not bad, and I'm okay with that. A lot of people in the Christian community, they've got their whole sights set on dying, and then when they start to die, they do everything they can to keep from it. It's just the quackiest thing I've ever seen. But I am at peace. I am at peace. And I want to help this next generation to be so solid in the gospel. As much as I have to offer, I want that. My relationship with Daniel is a cherished relationship. But I also need to know that Daniel is prepared to go on from this point forward. I mean, just think about it. I'm going to be dead 40 years and Daniel's going to still be, if everything goes naturally, Daniel will still be up preaching the gospel. And that excites me. Not the part about me being dead, but but see, that's already factored in. I've already pre-digested that. I pre-digest life. I look out and see what all possibilities are. I realize the good could happen, but I also know the bad can happen. I go ahead and pre-digest it. And then it's like, okay, so this has happened. Oh, well, yeah, we've dealt with this already. And that's what the gospel has done to me. I don't know how else to describe it, except that I pre-digest the future. And the people on both sides of the political scale are saying it's going to be cataclysmic, whether one wins or the other one wins. And I've pre-digested both of them. The possibility of each have already been digested and pre-digested for me. And, but what if and what if? I don't know what if. And I'm not going to start worrying about things that are out of my control.
And so it is, we must leave you, family and friends. If you'd like to know anything about the Gospel Revolution, then call our office on
832-318-9339.
Or call Jeff to make that pledge today, 321-220-4373. Of course, you can also visit gospelrevolution.com and hit the donate button. You can find us on your favorite social media network, Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. Please be sure to hit that subscribe, share, and like button on whatever platform you are listening. Now it's good night from Daniel Rouse in the frozen tundra.
And it's good night from Michael Williams right here in Clarksville. My grandson is visiting. He has slept in this morning, but I think I hear a mouse in the house. So thank you guys for joining us. And gosh, if you don't give, we're going to keep doing it anyway. Again, we just heard Don roll over in his grave. But it's true. We're going to do it regardless of what anybody does. We'll either do it in a struggle, or we'll do it, free and clear and capable of living and breathing and going and doing, or we'll do it with that being hampered. That's just the reality. I don't have any other skills to bring in income. I was never taught anything. The jobs I held before were many and sundry, but there's none that I could do now that I would even have the ability to do. So we do appreciate you. This has been what a wonderful ride this has been. I'll never be able to thank you guys enough for listening. Just thank you for listening.
We sure hope that you enjoyed today's Powercast. And remember, we'll be here to do the same thing all over again next week, only
better.
Since you're knocking on the door, you're begging to come in, yeah. Unaware that all the while love's been knocking from within. You are the love you seek, a perfect yet unique, righteous, holy. Yeah. When you're lost and alone, staring at the unknown, and these words be the cause that guides you back home. We are one, we are love, we are. Know where you gotta be, nothing to complete. It's not a thing that you need, you're the love. Just remember to breathe and take a second off. Look, I'm just trying to remind you that you're perfectly divine, flawlessly designed. When you're lost and alone, staring at the unknown, let these words be the compass that guides you back home. We are one, we are love, we are. We are love.
Deconstructing religion and barbecuing the sacred cows of Christianity before your very eyes. You are listening to
The Gospel Revolution.